would never go up front again.
You can't not go out front.
Capital Caper Day 14. Well, I suppose it's mostly state houses left at this point, not so many more capitals. Also, it's really kind of like mostly just vacation. And it was a fun trip, so I'm glad you're getting to come along. This week for the Daily Camera editorial, we have to write our predictions for what's going to be the biggest news story in Boulder in 2021, which is like great, awesome. Like, because predicting the biggest news story of the year is always so easy, right? Because like last year, for example, this time people would be like, oh, the election, it's going to be hot. Or like the Final Four, maybe people are going to care about that. Or who knows what Ansu Fumoto's playing at Bravo Vale, that was probably going to be a big deal. Turns out none of those things were the big story of 2020. I'm going to go way further back before I get to that writing that piece, which I have to do like very soon. It's due a day early for some reason. I don't know why. But got to do it. Got to send it in today. So I don't really have time to do this at all. But I'm going to anyway because I did say I was going to tell this story from the book that I'm writing about. Well, you'll hear what it's about in a second. Harmony music is a word a musicologist would use to describe onstage bandas that mimics the actual gangs of thieves, frequently with a Stadler or a Berryman as a chieftain that capered about the parts of Europe tourists now like because people like Anton and Wolfie had interesting lives there during the Age of Enlightenment. The 18th century, which gives 6 centuries of classical music a misleading name, was a time for Haydn, Mozart, and St. George. They were followed by the proto-romantic composers like Schubert, Weber, and Rossini, who changed music forever by keeping it exactly the same. The crown heads of Europe, in their defense, and attempt to keep them, if not implemented, at least tolerated many social innovations. The economic and social collapses that led to the subsequent losing of those heads in many cases and crowns in all but a few ushered in the age known to the Western world as the time roughly beginning with the British Indo-European American Civil War and ending with the Treaty of Versailles, or known to those educated just in Western music, the Romantic Era, or, if you're Saint-Saëns, the end of music, which died with Beethoven in 1827. Whether the reforms caused or merely postponed revolution, one result of the Age of Enlightenment rulers did live to see was the private sector's response to the liberation of the middle of the servant class, freelance musicians. This term for artists carry the pejorative of the time, it being as dignified to sell one's sword as a bow arm, which is to say far less than being a regular in the service of the crown or at least the household of a duke. Had the profession been younger or modern gunnery advanced faster, lobbyists and musicians would be both be hired guns or licensed privateers. An innovation that is best defined as a consequence of the liberal policies of that age that liberated serfs to become indentured, impressed, or truly free, unemployed first, is the invention of the clarinet. In his defense, all Johann Christoph Denner was trying to do is improve the Shalamo. So if you're wondering, what the fuck is a Shalamo? First of all, good for you. Skip ahead a few paragraphs if you want to keep it that way. And isn't this thing cool? You can't play this thing, it's ridiculous. It's got to be so hard to play. Where was I? Right. So now, that's just as clarinet players. First of all, go ahead and put your hand in your other pocket. It's fine. You're about to read the things you already know about but love thinking about. For those of you who stuck around anyway, you did this to your own self. It's just a sob story, and you'll know when it's over. I don't know the difference between a horn and a pipe. It sounds boring. Take a pipe and blow it. Hear that pitch? If you cut that pipe in half and blow it again, the sound will be approximately an octave higher, assuming the bore is mostly consistent. If it's a Shalamo, throw it in the fire if you're cold. They burn well. If you play it first, when you overblow it, you'll get a 12th instead. And the odd chance someone illiterate in clarinet is still reading this, if you blow on a recorder and play a C, if you do nothing but blow harder, you'll overblow and C an octave higher. If you do the same exercise on a Shalamo first, instead of blowing harder, just drop your jaw a little. No, not that much. Yeah. There it is. Keep your jaw there. Now you know what's coming. Instead of a C, you'll get a G because that's how the harmonic series work. It's just the physics of tubes vibrating. If it ain't broke, so that's not what Denner was trying to fix. Since the instrument was a low capital, low skill way to enter the freelance musician market for the urban youth of the day, what he was trying to do was make it louder and cheaper. It's not that loud, you know. Modern high school age or younger, most aspiring Shalamo players couldn't afford a recorder, and in many instances due to youth and relative inexperience, hadn't mastered fellatio yet, making the jaw string to overblow a Shalamo and keeping a tightly sealed embouchure an unnecessary challenge. Since universal school was not an ideal of the Enlightenment, it was for Denner to be on the side of these kids who were just trying to make their way in a broken system. And he had the key. The register key. Now, he can advertise with panache that like a smiling housewife in a 1950s appliance commercial, that all young clarinet players' work can be done with the press of a button. The small incision at the back of the shaft creates a vent that, in answer to every young boy clarinetist's dream, because at the time it was a boy's job, the instrument can overblow itself. Hit a key and go from C to G. Or B flat to F, or A to E, results vary. In making the clarinet easier to play, he made it impossible to play in tune. Really in any key, but especially in a key that isn't B flat or A. Therefore, as a consequence, clarinets then and now are in the world of transposing instruments. If you're illiterate, when you see a C on the page, you play a C on the piano, and your ear hears a C. If you see a C on a C, if you see a C and play a C on an A clarinet, you'll hear an A, unless it's a bass and an F. With the register key, what used to be the honky sounding can't jump more than a 12 boxwood Shalamo was now the 4-octave range blackwood clarinet. Who wants to carry around 4 different recorders now, and all you need, depending on the day, is 1 or 2 clarinets? Well, if you can afford it and have talent, you would prefer to just carry around 1 oboe and your dignity. In reality, one needs to own at least a B flat and an A clarinet. Most also own a bass clarinet, which is usually in B flat, but can be written for bass clef, and in A, which isn't that easy to keep track of if you're literate, drunk, and have to piss, as likely would be if you're playing bass clarinet in a Wagner opera, in my experience. This is why most clarinet players agree, if Mozart had lived long enough to throw a chair at the Flying Dutchman, perhaps he would have been spared the Ring Cycle, or the Lord of the Rings, or Game of Thrones, or any of the other versions of exactly the same stupid story that goes on in circles about 12-foot dragons and magic fruits. Principal clarinets don't own any flat. One of the perks is a sub plays the Halloween concert, which is a nice mid-fall season for a vacation, as clarinet players frequently need them. It also gives the college seniors some professional experience, and everyone knows because of the song that Berlioz is great, but it ain't like fantastic. When a clarinet player jokes, it's hard. It was tuned to the factory. It's a device to soothe the pain of the repairman's bill. Clarinets are cheap, as due to its weird bore, it's mostly a finished product when it leaves the factory. Okay, it's also cheap because of colonialism, like everything else. They're originally made of Buxus sempervivens, which grows like a weed all over France, except slowly. Grenadilla, on the other hand, who fucking cares? It grows in Africa, and colonies are for stealing, not environmental stewardship. Once a person selects their new clarinet, they take it to their guy to get it prepared to be played. Every clarinet player has a guy that does custom clarinet work. This work can cost thousands of dollars to arrive at an instrument that will more or less play in tune for the next 15 years or so until it becomes blown out or becomes a lamp. Blown out refers to the point that your guy's ability to take a little wood out of this tone hole or add a little epoxy to that crack is no longer to the challenge of making F and F sharp sound like different notes. This is the point that the instrument can be run through with wires and become a lamp. My bass clarinet and B-flat clarinet lamps are not instruments I played. In fact, were given to me for the purpose of making lamps. Graduates of a music department, instead of a conservatory or school, or people who like money and lack dignity, probably also own a litter of saxophones. Or maybe it's called a bastard of saxophones, I don't care to know. The saxophone was invented by Edel Sax, not as an improvement to the clarinet, but as a louder outdoor clarinet made of cheaper material that can get wet. I'm not saying that plastic rain is awesome. I am saying that if plastic had invented earlier, we might have been spared the saxophone altogether, since you can make a clarinet plenty louder and more obnoxious sounding with roughly equivalent environmental consequences of colonialism if you make both it and the reed out of plastic. The clarinet: fast, cheap, unreliable, short-lived, and in frequent need of repair. Nice to look at with way too high risk of a saxophone solo for no reason. If it were a car, it'd be a Saab. Bang! For no reason except to let those who wanted to skip ahead to know when to tune in, and a final chance to throw some shade. Leave it to the French to even make the clarinet bloody. They're not as socially irresponsible as avocados or pomegranates, which already look like blood and definitely taste like sin, the worth it kind. Made from imported parts, as if it was going to make a difference, but most Americans, including me, I confess, play on ethically challenged instruments built by Buffet Chuchuel. I guess this is what I get for throwing shade. Now I'm noticing this crack on my clarinet is A, a lot bigger than I thought it was, B, actively open, and goes to not one but two trill keys holes. That is looking like lamp time for you, buddy. Oh. Trashy. It's a completely other one. Oh, lamp time. I mean, in this clarinet's defense, it already survived this from quite some time ago, and also it's one of these greasy buffets from the 80s. So I mean, like any situation, this doesn't owe anybody anything. And it still plays. Now it's like I got an outdoor clarinet. Well, these cracks are definitely more than just cosmetic, but it still works. I mean, now it's basically an outdoor clarinet. I think I found the final evolution of clarinets. Well, I guess maybe it's an interim stage between lamp is they actually become a saxophone, because I mean, it's cracked this bad, you can play it outside. Who cares? There was this one summer where at the music camp I teach at, where one of the clarinet players started playing that ridiculous saxophone solo on the clarinet. And of course, because they're musicians who can hear, as I was reminded, it spread like wildfire. Next thing you know, everyone's playing it. It was awful. And then I realized, like, I don't even know notes.